Hello, everyone. Nice to have you guys here today. Really glad to have you guys listening to the show. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is Bitcoin. I know a lot of you guys, as soon as you hear me say Bitcoin, you close your ears. You don't want to hear about this. But Bitcoin is the ultimate bubble machine. That's what I like to call it. Ever since it was started in 2009, it's went into bubble after bubble after bubble. Each subsequent bubble is higher than the last one and exponentially larger, with a larger volume of market capital. Things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. And Bitcoin's motion is this bubble manufacturing business, whatever you want to call it. Now, a lot of times, in life, it's all about timing. Anybody that can tell you about delivering a joke, it's all about getting the timing right. The whole thing of delivering a joke is all about getting the timing right. And for Bitcoin, this could actually be the timing. Now, you got take over in Australia. I was listening to a show about Australia this morning. Did you know they're expecting their real estate bubble to pop in the next few months? And their real estate right now over in Australia is going to drop between 40 and 45% across the board. This is going to affect people's retirements all across the country. But it's not restricted to Australia. There's real estate bubbles in the United States. There's real estate bubbles in Canada. There's real estate bubbles in the United Kingdom. Real estate bubbles actually almost all over there. China's got the biggest real estate bubble of them all right now. And they're all in the process of bursting. The United States real estate bubble will probably take a little bit longer. But I'm expecting the Canadian real estate bubble's already in the process of bursting right now. Things are changing very rapidly. In this sort of environment that we're in right now, with the central banks starting to become more dovish, and first it's talk and then they take action, more dovish action. In this sort of environment, capital, money, liquidity is searching for a home. And right now, because the dollar is the best looking home for capital, capital has been moving into things like U.S. Treasury bonds, rather heavily, and capital's searching for a home. And gold and silver are not presenting themselves the way they should be because of the price suppression. It's as simple as that. Because the price has been suppressed so long, they've made a negative atmosphere surrounding gold and silver. But Bitcoin has a somewhat negative atmosphere around Bitcoin too, because of its large fall in price. People that have money right now, big money, they're investing in things where they're going to make return and yield and things. Take J.P. Morgan, for instance. He's got millions of ounces of silver that they've invested in. Now these guys, on their level, they do not invest in something and hold it and go long on something long term unless they're expecting to make rather large profits. They're playing the long game. J.P. Morgan's playing the long game on silver. There's a reason why they're playing the long game on silver, and it is going to pay ultimately. But in the short term, we're looking at Bitcoin having bottomed out now, or pretty much bottomed out. The next move in Bitcoin is for it to slowly heat up. Now, we got all, in this environment also, we've got all these retirement savings accounts and everything else in this paper market. They're all heavily invested in this paper market. I can see a time coming in the not-so-distant future when Bitcoin starts to heat up and everybody wants yield, where it becomes a fairly simple investment. Retirement money will start to move into it. We could, in this next bubble, if you thought 20,000 was a large number in Bitcoin before it burst last time, this bubble's probably going to be exponentially larger. But Bitcoin's a bubble-making machine, and it will burst. So when do you think the real big retirement money is going to start to invest in Bitcoin? Because they're not investing in it right now. Well, I can pretty much tell you when I think that the real big retirement money is going to invest in Bitcoin is when it's substantially higher than it is now, and it's moving into bubble territory. This is just going to exacerbate the middle class people right now who have saved all their lives. They put away their retirement savings. When the Bitcoin bubble bursts, it's just going to add fuel to a more extensive fire of the real estate bubbles bursting as well. Because most people are retirement age, they have a lot of equity in their home. It's where a lot of their capital is. It's an equity in their home. And they might have some stocks, some bonds. Most of their assets are in paper. Now, all of a sudden, maybe 6 months or a year from now, they hear about this Bitcoin for the first time, and their friends tell them what a great bargain it is. Bitcoin has went up ever since its inception. It's grown exponentially, and they start to explain it to them that it's not a Ponzi scheme or anything like that. It's a secure investment. This will fuel this next bubble into Bitcoin. Massive amounts of money could pour in. So when are they going to buy? They're going to buy when the thing is on its way to the moon. And it's halfway there. Well, it's going to go up into a bubble and it's going to burst again. It's deplorable what's happening. It's almost like it's designed to destroy the middle class and yield a two-class society, the upper crust, the 1%, and the rest of everybody down below in poverty. This is where we're headed. Well, I'm going to talk to you guys a few minutes about something entirely different. You know, as Monty Python says, now for something entirely different. Well, that's what I'm going to do. You know, years ago, when I was 47 years old, you know, I went on a diet. I did some research into how the human body works with insulin. Back before the advent of insulin, back before they could give you a needle for insulin, diabetes, a lot of people with diabetes used to get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. Pretty much didn't matter what they ate because their body couldn't produce the anabolic insulin that you need to make fat. And if you can't make fat, you can eat cakes, pies, cookies, whatever you want. And if you can't turn that into insulin and you can't make fat, well, you'll get skinnier and skinnier. You'll basically starve to death while you're eating. Your body has to produce insulin. So I've seen pictures of these pictures are really old, going back like into the 1800s and stuff, or early 20th century, and pictures of people before and after, before insulin was invented, and afterward they almost look skeletal because of what the diabetes did to them. Took them right down. It's just skin and bones, you know. And then after they got insulin, they put the fat back on, a layer of subcutaneous fat, you know, and they look so much better, you know, with a little bit of fat, you know. They felt healthier too, you know, of course, right? So insulin was a wonderful invention, but here's the thing: where do you get insulin? What's the most readily available source of insulin for your body? It comes from any food that in the old days, back in the 1950s, they used to call it starchy foods. They didn't use the term carbohydrates. You know, but the body, there's two main sources of calorie intake for people. It's either fat, you either get your calorie from fat, or you get your calorie from carbohydrates. If you're into diet and nutrition, you go into the stores, a lot of you read the packages, And if something's got a lot of calories in it, you'll read one of two things. Either it's high in fat, it retains the calories from fat, or it's high in carbohydrates, and it gets the calories from carbohydrates. So there's low-fat diets where people, they go in, they read the packages, and they buy something that's all carbohydrate, very low fat. Or the opposite, somebody's on a low carb diet, they'll pick the items that are high in fat to get the calories, that have low carbohydrates. So you got these two choices, either low fat or low carbohydrate. Well, I studied, when I went on this diet back 47 years ago, I studied into the Indians. Well, actually, I made a mistake. I shouldn't call them Indians, call them Native Americans. Okay? Pretend you were them. You're over here. You live here all your life. What do you eat? What's your diet? Well, when they settlers first come over here and they spotted the Native Americans were built like an athlete. You could see their stomach muscles. They had abs, and they were able to run all day, and they were healthy. Like their teeth were perfect. None of them were grabbing their chest and dying from a heart attack. You know, none of them had coronary artery disease. Didn't have cancer. They were healthy, really healthy. And so, pretend you're one of them. What do you eat? Well, you're plopped out in the wilderness, basically. You don't have a house. You can't go to the Piggly Wiggly grocery store, because there isn't any. Right? So what do you eat? You eat what's available to you. There's wildlife galore. Back before when the settlers first came here, it's just wildlife running around everywhere. Quite seriously. You know, it wasn't like it is now. There was all kinds of wildlife. So there was white-tailed deer, and there was bison, and there's all kinds of and they had bows and arrows, the Native Americans. They had spears. They had ways of trapping. All kinds. They had almost an endless supply of meat and fat. That's what they had. They had to eat what they had. Meat and fat. You know? But they also had things that they grew. In the summertime, starting early in the spring, just like we do, they could plant seeds. Beans. They had beans. They had corn. You know? And they'd also go out and pick berries and stuff. You know, the ladies would go out and sometimes the warriors would go out to, you know, pick berries and stuff and maybe lay them on top of a rock or something and watch them while they were in the sun, and they would beat them down and make a mash out of them and make a nice, almost like fruit roll-ups. Right? Anyway, they had berries. And they had corn, and they could make like corn cakes and stuff like that, you know. But all of this was done during the summer months. So here you are. You have a diet that has some carbohydrates in it in the summertime. And, you know, it's things like berries and fruits and nuts and whatever they could find, you know. And they had a certain amount of carbohydrates. But then winter would hit. And during the fall, they'd probably eat up most all their carbohydrate stuff, because that's the stuff that tastes the best. That's what they want the most. You know, those fruit roll-ups. Are there any of those left, hon? Any of those fruit roll-ups left? Like that they made beating the berries down on a rock. Or, I want some of those corn cakes. Is there any left? You know, but by the time January come around, there's very little of that left. Very little of the goodies left. And they had to get out of there and go out in the snow and hunt down some bison or whatever. And they were hungry, you know. So they bring the bison back, you know, and they'd strip the fat off of it and stuff. And, the fat was the best part. That's where they got the most calories, you know. And so they'd eat meat mostly all winter. Well, what would happen is in the fall, after eating all those corn cakes and And after eating all those berries, you know, and everything else, come fall, they'd be a little bit chubbier than they were the previous spring. A little bit of a paunch maybe on the men, you know, and just a little bit chubbier, a little bit more fat on them. But by the time winter was done and spring come around, they'd be craving some berries and craving some green stuff, craving things like, because all they had to eat all winter was fat and meat, mostly all winter. That's all they had, and they had to eat what they had available. And so if you could have saw them in the wintertime in their structure that they had, whatever their structure was, the Native Americans, if you could go inside their structure and in there, they'd probably have a little bit of tobacco putting away, smoking on a pipe, and they'd probably be sitting there eating this big slob of fat, a great big hunk of meat and fat. Now we look at them today and we say, oh, that'll give you a heart attack. Don't eat that. Don't eat that. You'll die of a heart attack. But they were just, as fat was just dripping down their chin. Well, what really happened to them over those months of the winter is you'd be able to see their ribs by spring. By spring, they would have lost a lot of weight over the course of the winter from what they were in the fall. Maybe 15 pounds of weight. And just the fat would just come right off of them from eating all that fat. And it doesn't seem right. If a person eats a lot of fat, they should get fat, right? Because fat's high in calories? So I'm not getting something here. Why were they losing weight over the winter? You know? So, you know, I tried a diet 10 years ago, and it was based basically loosely on this Indian diet, you know. And I weighed 275 pounds. And my blood pressure was high. Chronically high. I was on high blood pressure medicine. Didn't feel good or anything. So I went on this diet. I was strict to it. Now listen, I'd not recommend any of you guys even try this diet. Never try a diet unless you go to your doctor first and you explain to him exactly what you're going to do and ask him if it's okay. Never go on any diet. But I went on this diet. It took 6 months. I stayed strictly on this diet. And basically, by the time 6 months were over, I had went from about 40% body fat index, 275 pounds with high blood pressure. I went down to 168 pounds, quite seriously, 168 pounds and about a 12% body fat index. But there was some side effects. Cleaned my arteries out as clean as a whistle. I think that's what was making my blood pressure high. Was my arteries, I think, were somewhat plugged up. I was 47 years old. I think my arteries are somewhat plugged up, and that's what was causing my high blood pressure. Well, it's just like cleaning out a sink, you know. If you get a bunch of hair in your sink and you pour Drano down there and it burns all the hair out, then the water can flow freely. Well, I think that's the way my system was. My blood could flow freely, and I was still taking a little. I cut my medicine back, my blood pressure medicine, but still was too much. My blood pressure dropped down so darn low that if I stood up, I'd start to pass out. That's why I'd recommend you not to try a diet like this. It could be dangerous, really, seriously. Anyway, long story short, I had to quit the diet because I started to get low blood pressure like that. My blood pressure was low. Well, you know, I gained a lot of that weight back after I quit the diet. And I went back to eating the normal breads and cereals that everybody else eats, and cakes and pies and cookies and everything else. And my weight went back on because I was creating all this insulin. And this insulin's an anabolic, and it creates fat, you know. My weight went back up to 240 pounds, where it stayed pretty much ever since. But my blood pressures never went back up. And I think the reason why is I think it stripped my arteries so clean, you know. It was a fat diet. Basically, my diet was a fat diet. The only thing I did is I didn't go 100% zero, no carbohydrates. What I did was in the morning I'd make myself a pancake, and I'd use oatmeal and eggs. Mix the oatmeal and eggs together. Pancake wasn't that great a tasting pancake, okay? I put a big slab of butter in the frying pan. I mixed the oatmeal and eggs together, you know. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to surround each oat flake with egg. And the reason why I was doing that was it takes time for your body to break that protein down to get to the carbohydrate that's inside, which is the oat. And then the oat is already a slow-burning carbohydrate. So what that breakfast would do is the whole day it would give me a steady supply of carbohydrates so that I wouldn't. And so I'd eat that at breakfast, a big pancake, put the butter in the frying pan. I'd make a big pancake out of eggs and oatmeal and add a little bit of salt to it, you know. And I would fry it just like a regular pancake until it was brown. And then I'd put butter on top of it. And then I used to put a big slab of cheese on top of it and let the cheese melt on top of it, and then just a little bit of honey. Just a little bit of honey, just enough to make it. And that was what I had every morning for breakfast on that diet, you know. And that lasted me most of the whole day. I mean, it gave me a good start. And then in the evening, all I would have is I wouldn't have any carbohydrates in the evening. Now, I tested myself every day on that diet. I used something called keto strips. And this tests for the amount of acid in your urine. So I test it every day. The keto strips, they change color. And what I found was that oatmeal every day would keep my my blood from going into ketosis. I would during the day, but when that would run out, maybe at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, the oatmeal would be all gone because I was on a restricted calorie. I kept my calories at 1,500 calories a day, and which is low, very low. It's not starvation low, but it's. I generally burn about 2,500 calories a day or something like that, and so I was about 1,000 calories short every day, you know, during that 6-month period. And what I noticed was that in the evening, about maybe 10 o'clock at night, the keto strips would say that I was going into ketogenic type diet. And so that's what the Indians were doing. The Indians didn't get in the wintertime, probably in the springtime. They never got any carbohydrates, or hardly at all. Not by their own choice, but that's just the way it was. They run out of all the goodies. Their corn cakes or whatever they had, you know, carbohydrates they'd put away in the last summer. They'd run out of those goodies by spring, and all they had was big slabs of fat. That's all they had to eat. So they had to eat it, and that's what they ate, and they'd lose weight. Well, that's the way with me. Every night, you know, that's all I'd have. But still, I'd restrict the amount of intake of things like nuts, seeds, sunflower seeds. I was eating pumpkin seeds, and I was eating almonds, and I'd limit myself to one piece of fruit a day, you know, and that's what my diet was. Now, I'm not recommending this diet, and the reason why I'm not recommending it is because of what it did to me. It made me so that my blood pressure was so low. By the time I quit I was forced to quit the diet because of my blood pressure being so low. But, you know, I just figured I'd tell you guys about it. I'm not recommending it in any way. I would say that before you guys even think about any diet, not even this diet, but any diet, to consult a physician first and talk to him about it and tell him what you're going to do before you resort to any diet. But I was just telling you about the effects of this diet, what it actually did to me, you know, and my personal experience with it, because it has a lot to do with the way your body converts fats. This is the reason why, if you got fat, say your bum is fat, okay? That's not cake stored in there. That's fat. Your body is made to convert fat into the sugars that your body needs, but it does not convert them efficiently. not like it does carbohydrates. So if you eat carbohydrates all the time, say you've ate carbohydrates your whole life, you've had a steady diet of carbohydrates, you're giving your body what your body prefers to lay down fat and cholesterol in your body. So those fat reserves you see, say your hips and arms are fat, once your body has stuffed everything full with fat, it's filled up your hips, it's filled up your arms, it's filled up everything with fat, then at that point in time, it starts to stuff fat away in your arteries too, in the form of cholesterol. So, and when you reverse that process, you don't give your body enough fat to supply it, it starts drawing fat from its reserves. Just like bank reserves, it starts to draw the fat from its reserves. And once it's drawed all the easy stuff, which would be the subcutaneous fat and all the fat that's like in around in your stomach and hips and every place else, and once that's all gone, then your body looks at the arteries, the fat that's stored in your arteries in the form of cholesterol and stuff like that, and it says, well, that's nothing more than food. Body doesn't say we can't touch that. Your body, you use it just like food once you get down to a certain point. And for me, that was when I broke down below 170 pounds. And that was just like cleaning out the drains in the sink, cleaning, putting the roto-rooter down in the drain, cleaning out all the hair. Once that hair's gone, then the blood can flow freely through the arteries. Suddenly the blood pressure drops like a stone. Well, that can prove dangerous, So that's why I'm not recommending this diet, because if you're used to having plugged arteries, and all of a sudden you clean them out, it's going to change your body condition. And it can change it drastically. Overnight. I mean, if you're a person that if your body's used to a certain thing, and all of a sudden it's like pulling the rug out from under you. And for me, that was if I was sitting down in the chair, after I got down to about 168 pounds, if I was sitting down in the chair and I stood up quick, I'd start to black out. And that seriously scared me. I went into the doctor and I said, something wrong with me. He goes, oh, it's your blood pressure. Oh, that's what's wrong with me. My blood pressure. Yeah. But, I mean, that can be serious. Say you're walking down a big flight of stairs or something and that hits you. I mean, you pass out. Wouldn't be a good thing, So I'm not recommending that diet for anybody. I'm just telling you what the effects on me were personally in this particular diet. Anyway, that's what happened. And even to this day, my blood pressure's still down from what like I went to the doctor last week. My blood pressure is 118 over 68. And this is 10 years later. And the reason why I think it's that way is I think that it takes a long time to build up the cholesterol in your arteries to the point where it starts to raise your blood pressure. Called arterial sclerosis. Right? Or plugged arteries. Everybody calls it plugged arteries. That's not an overnight process. That's a process, in my case, it took 47 years. But it seems like my body cleaned it out in a month. And of course, it takes a long time to build that back. Now, it's been 10 years. Very interesting, the effects a diet like that can actually have. I don't, to tell you the truth, I don't fully understand exactly how it all works and functions. The body is a very complex machine. I can just tell you what actually worked for me, and I don't think I'd do it again, though. Of course, it took an awful lot of willpower to stay on that diet for 6 months. I really absolutely craved sugars, and the cravings were unbelievable that I had to fight through, that I wanted to have something sweet, and something like a cake or something, or a pie or something like that. It's just, the cravings were unbelievable during that period of time, but I stuck with it for 6 months, and that was the effects. Listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.